know what? We need my mic audio. There's the audio. No desktop audio. And I don't want to be too loud. So, we're going off the instructions I pasted from the website because I thought it might be blocked. We've copied the sprites from the media bundle into our drive so we have access to them and we don't have to worry about them moving. We're going to start Construct 2 and then go to File, New. So File, New, and you'll see Template or Example. There's a list of different things we can explore later. For right now, we're just going to click a new empty project. We're not going to pick 16 by 9, landscape, or anything. We're just going to pick a new empty project and go from there. So the size of the layout, just the layout itself, they have us adjusting. So the layout size right now to start is 1708 by 960. We want to change that to 4000 by 2048. So it's getting longer and taller, but it's going to be 4,000 pixels long, 2048 pixels high. So you'll see it gets a lot bigger, and our window size is still this 854 by 480. We may have that change in a moment. So we just went with a standard new project, and now they're going to show us a new tool that we haven't used yet because we've always been using the single color backgrounds, but we're going to insert a tiled background. So inside here, the icons are a little bit different than on the guide. We'll find tiled background by double clicking, and then we'll pick tiled background. It's going on to layer 0, and what should pop up for you is this. Mine popped up on the other screen, so I had to scroll a little bit. It's going to show, now we're going to go find the background.png image in that folder we saved. So I'm in my drive, I'm in my game and web work, I'm in Construct 2, I made this jungle platformer, and I pasted all the sprites there. I'm going to go to background image, background. So if I zoom out, you can see there's the image, and it has a width of 1024 and a height, a width of 1024 and a height of 2048. So when we close this, what you should see is the background image, but you're like, that doesn't look right. So what we end up having to change is the size of this. So you can see as we stretch it out, it's going to start to fit. And if we go beyond that 2048, that's where you start to see the image tile. So we're going to adjust the size of this on the layout to match 4000 by 2048. Now I want to reset the position to 0, 0. So there's our background image. We have this here. It's pretty big, so we'll have to zoom out, control and scroll down to zoom out. We can see everything. You can control and scroll up. The entire layout is easily viewable. But what we want to see now is like our background is there. We want to add some other objects on the layer. So as we go through here, what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to the layer tab, and we've done this before. We're going to rename this layer 0 background layer, or just background, and then we're going to add a new layer. I'm going to lock the background layer, and we'll call this one main because they have it there. So now we have the main layer unlocked, the background layer locked, and now I can't accidentally grab and move around that tiled background. Making sure that main is our active layer, that means it's highlighted. We're going to go insert some new objects on the layer, and we're going to start by adding in the jungle platformer tiles. We talked about the tile set, we looked at the Mario images. So on here, we're going to have to import these. Just like we did for the tiled background, we're going to insert, but this time we're going to choose a sprite. So on the main layer, we can see it going. Now, this is where our windows, where did my thing go? Here's my animation frames. I made my animation frame window really, really big because I was doing things. But you'll see in a second this is going to get even bigger. So this is what we're going to deal with. It wants to start off with a default size, and we want to cut up the animation frame. So find this window, the animation frame, right-click, and we're going to choose Import Frames from Sprite Strip. And now it's automatically in the background folder because that's where we last were. I'm going to go back one folder and find Tiles. And there's only one image in the Tiles folder. And if we take a look at what that image is,
it's right, but it doesn't, Construct doesn't like it.
Construct doesn't like it, but we'll look at it and see in a second. So hold on, I'm opening it up. Here's the actual image. Take a look.
Wait, which one is this?
So that's what this image is. It looks really weird right now, but we're going to chop it up in a second. Okay? So Tiles is what we're going to pick. But now it's giving us a choice, and it's going to say, how do we want to divide this up? Well, I know by looking at the image, it's 12 by 12. So I'm going to put in 12 by 12 and hit OK. And I got to wait a moment. Constructs, did I hit cancel? Nope, Construct's processing. We'll wait.
It's just not responding for a second,
And then it does.
But it didn't do it correctly, I don't think. Yeah, it's just chopped it up into a million pieces.
It should be 144 pieces.
It is 144, but the pieces don't make sense.
Yours don't look like mine on the screen right now?
They do, but some of them are just like have a little bit in the corner. Like some of them.
That's what they're supposed to be. You'll see when you're not seeing the big picture right now. You'll get there in a second. Gabe, what's up?
Yeah, when you said we should have 144, you mean 143, right?
I have 144 because I'm going to delete some of the empty frames. See how frame 0 is empty, frame 18 is empty, 23, 20. 144 is because I started with 0 frame. I didn't check the checkbox for replace existing animation, but now we've got some empty ones. We can delete the original one by right-clicking and choosing delete. Then for other things that we have on here, I'm going to go through and see. This one we can delete. 18 we can delete. 20 we can delete. 39 we can delete.
I have 131.
37 we can delete. So then there's like 11 blank frames. 38 I can delete. I don't even think you need to do this, but we'll see in a second if there are any other blank ones. Delete, 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 delete. I got to 132 and I don't think I have any blank. Oh, 62 is blank for me. I got to 131. I think that's the number I remember.
132.
I'm so confused.
Okay, you didn't slice up your image. So right click on, right here, ready? You're going to right click and you're going to choose Import Frame from Sprite Strip. You're going to browse that tile image and then type in 12 by 12 in that pop-up window. And then you want to check the checkbox to replace existing animation. Now click OK. Wait, it's processing because it's slicing up 144 images. Wait. There it is. So I just went through and deleted the empty frames. So my frame 0 to 32 is the ground looking stuff. 33 through 131 are different trees and leaves. Okay? And you're right, some of them look weird, like there's only a little bit. But this was what it's like to slice up a tile map. So now the tile map is there for us, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay? Oh, default animation speed. So in here, the default animation speed is 5 frames per second. So let's just put this on the screen and watch what happens when we run this. Remember, Chrome's going to pop up over here. But here we go. There is my game so far.
That's a really fun game.
Well, it's going to go through all 131 frames. It's going to take, what, 5 frames a second, 12.
It looks like the tree's running.
It does, and then it's just going to stop on the last one. So how do we stop that? Does anybody remember?
Set the animation speed to 0.
Set the animation speed to 0. So if you closed out of that window already, double click on the background, And then over here in this properties area, frame speed 0, loop no, repeat count no, 1, and then repeat to no, ping pong no. Ping pong means it'll go from first frame to last frame, and then it'll go from last frame to first frame. It won't immediately loop back to that first one again. Gabe.
Wait, so we said
Speed 0.
Loop
Loop no. Repeat count I have as 1, but it's not repeating. And the only thing I changed was speed from 5 to 0.
Okay.
So now it will not advance until we tell it to. Speed property went to 0, and the tiles won't keep changing. They'll stay on the current frame. Tile should be on the layout, and we can create different things. So frame 1, for me, is what it looks like. If we deleted these things, what they want us to do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit over here. Okay? And we know that if we hold control and drag, we get multiple objects. So this is all just sprite, sprite, sprite. What would be a good name for this? Instead of sprite, should this be tile? I hit control, and I clicked it, held control and dragged, and I was able to make a new one. So that's just me making new tiles. But I just want 3 out here for right now to show some cool things off. Okay? So if these 3 are on here, what we can do is we can change their actual frame number. Notice down here, it tells us on this instance where our initial frame is. I'm thinking it's on... Initial frame is set to 0. So they have it as 1. Let's change it to 10 and 13. 10 for 1. There's one that's going to go in the middle. And then this one will change to 13. And then this one I'm going to change from 0 to 1. And now, hey, take a look at that. I have pretty cool looking level here, right?
How are you fitting together?
How am I fitting together? I changed it so that this one is frame 1, this one is frame 10, and this one is frame 13.
So why aren't they in order in the way that they fit?
Because you have to drag them around and put them in order. See? Now mine are out of order, and then mine are in order. Man, if only there were a way to get this to line up nicely.
Is there a way what's the tile?
There is a way to get it to line up nicely. So what we want to do is we want to turn on snap to grid. So in the view, we can turn on snap to grid. We can see show grid. And now you can see these things will kind of snap into place.
I like that.
And now the platform, I'm going to turn off show grid because I don't think I need it. It's not there. Now the platform fits together a lot better. And you can see on a 32 by 32 grid, these sprites take up 4 by 4 grid. So we could increase these sprite sizes a little bit because I think the default sprite size for these, if we go to resize, is 130 by 130.
The grid, it leaves like a tiny little gap in between the platforms. Like a very small gap.
Well, we'll have to adjust it. So
Very small gap.
let's see.
Yeah, you see?
Are you talking about like that little tiny one right there?
Yeah.
Just ignore it. When you zoom out, you won't see it.
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we snap to grid. Our tiles are 128 by 128, which is a multiple of 32. But I want to check this here, because when I size this, I see that it says the size of the tiles are 130 by 130. So something changed, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to come to this tile size for just this first tile 0, and we're going to set it to 128 by 128, and we're going to apply it to the whole animation. And what that's going to do is it's going to edit just a small bit of each one away. It says it's not responding, but it is. Now as we go back, zoom back in, and I think that's going to get rid of the small gap as we move these things on the grid. Now I can't see, well, until I zoom in here. And even then, I'm not sure how big that is or whether it's just a gradient on the image. But you won't see it when you're playing the game at normal game level. Okay? So we should be able to look and see that our tile size is 128 by 128. Our grid size is 32 by 32. And you could make the grid size 128 by 128 and leave the grid on. And that might help you here. 128 by
How'd you change the tile size?
128. So now, as we go through to snap things on here, but one of the problems doing it like this is you'll see, take a look at how it lines up with the grid and why is it doing it like this. So take a look. When I line this up here, it's not lining up in the actual grid. It's lining up with the anchor point in the middle. So if you wanted to change this, you'd have to change the anchor point of all of these to the upper corner so that the upper corner would line up for each tile. To resize the tiles, I'll do that again. Open up the tile animation, click the resize button, set it to 128 by 128. Mine was 130 by 130. Before you click OK, click the checkbox that says apply to whole animation, and then it'll process all 130 images and make them be that other size.
So how did you resize the grid? Because mine keeps on going back to 32 by 32.
Did you hit tab as you advance to the next one or hit enter on the keyboard?
I did. I'll do tab this time. This happened. 128, 128. Enter. And nothing happened.
Give me 1 second. So nothing selected. So nothing is selected. In the view menu, I'm going to go here and say 128, enter. And then I'm going to pin your view menu here. I forget how to pin this. Oh, this is a, I remember this bug. There was something here, snap to grid, show grid. Minimize ribbon, but we don't want to minimize it. Was that it? Okay, that's it. So if you have this thing automatically minimizing, it won't save updates that you type in. So you have to turn off this minimize ribbon button. Okay? And now they're going to snap to the middle of those.
Very cool. You right click and you turn off minimize.
Okay. So, snap to grid, we turned it on. Dragging the tiles together, and should they snap nicely to the 32 by 32 grid, we can snap 3 tiles together. Here's the other cool part. Ready? Ready? Once I get multiple things together, I can hold control to select multiple. And now I can drag, didn't want to stretch. Now I can drag a bunch of new platformers, and I can start building a level.
Oh my goodness.
Okay? So, before we get too far into tiles, because tiles is one thing, okay, let's take a look at the player now, because there's a couple more power techniques that it's going to help us with the player. So, we're going to add the player sprite, and this one's going to be tough, because we're going to have one sprite, but it's going to have a bunch of different animations that we've got to name appropriately to make sure the right animation comes up when the right key condition is happening. Okay? So, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I just have a couple of platforms on here, but we'll deal with it in a second. Double click on the background, adding in a sprite on main. And same thing, right click, import frames from sprite strip. And I'm going to go and find, on the jungle platformer, the player idle animation. And it's really easy. Player idle is the sprite strip. All the other ones, PL00, whatever, it shows the 10 frames for it. So because it's a sprite strip, Construct knows that there are 11 equal divisions in this. It's not just guessing. Because it's a square, it had to guess. But now it knows there are 11 frames that are going to be imported. We're going to click OK. And I'm going to say replace existing entire existing animation, just so I don't have to delete that first empty frame again. I'll say OK. And there's my sprite idle animation. And there they are, 0 through 10. 11 frames for this. Okay? It says 11 up here, and then it's 0 through 10. Now, for cropping, one of the things you're going to notice is the player has transparent empty space. That's common with importing PNG images, but it's bad practice to leave the empty space there, as it wastes memories and it can make collisions less reliable. So there's a quick way to get rid of everything. I forget who I was working with in this period. I was working with somebody about updating their sprites. Yeah. So there's a quick way. If you hold Shift and click the crop button, it will crop everything, not just this one, but all of them.
All the collision polygons are rectangles.
We're going to adjust the collision polygons with something better than the rectangles. Okay?
Yeah,
So as we go through here, we'll see that everything kind of changed. But we want to adjust the origin for this. So let's see. So the player's origin is going to go through here. We can quickly assign this by hitting 2 on the number pad and lock at the bottom. So on the origin point, they want us to move it from the center to the middle of the bottom of this. So we've moved this here. Just that number pad. Remember, I can move around with the number pad. So this is 7, 8, 9, and you can see it's jumping from 7, 8, 9 up here. 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. So 2 is where we're going. So we have that there, and we can quick assign it to be the bottom. It's a hassle for us to do this with every frame. So what we can do is we can right-click on here and say Apply to Whole Animation. So now when we go through here, our character is going to be tracking on the middle here. And this is just him kind of like, you know, bopping up and down in the actual frame. Okay? Speaking of the frame, the name right now is default. We're going to rename that to idle. And then in the properties bar, we have, you know, 11 frames, so we could do 11 frames per second. The guide suggests 9, so it's going to happen quicker than in a second. He'll do the whole idle animation. I'm going to go with 9. And then for loop, we're going to say yes, because we want the animation to be looping with the idle. We'll check that in a second. So right-click the idle animation. We should get a preview, so we can right-click over here and choose preview. And there's our character kind of like waiting for action, waiting for something to happen.
He's gonna pop somebody. I'm not there right.
Why not? Why don't you think you did it right?
What's your fault?
Oh, you didn't. So go back to frame 0.
2.
Hold Shift on the keyboard and click the crop button.
That 2 in the number.
That's the resize button. The one next to it is the crop button.
Stop pressing 2. Now right click on the origin.
Now you see, right?
Yeah.
Now on the origin point, which is this icon right here on my screen, origin point,
It's not all animation.
open that, and then you can use the number pad to move it around. We want it to number 2 to be the middle of the bottom of the frame. Okay? No, we didn't add a new one. We changed the origin. So just on the first frame, or whatever frame you're on, change the origin to number 2 on the keypad. It'll put it right in the middle of the bottom of the image. Yeah. And then you could right-click on that word origin and choose Apply to Whole Animation.
How can we snap it into what order?
Good, got it?
Yeah.
All right.
Snap it into what order?
So, Construct 2 comes with behaviors. Platformer is going to take care of a lot of it. What we're going to do here is we're going to make a movement square that our sprite follows. Okay? Yeah, so because we're not going to move the player, we're going to move an invisible square that the player is just like moving to that position.
And why would we do that?
Why would we do that? Because it's going to be easier to control the animation of the player with that. And I found an issue with sticking with the grid style of 128 by 128. It's very difficult at that point to get the player to stay up on the top.
So we're going back to 30.
I went back to 32 by 32 because now it's easier to get the player to stack up on top of like a platform. Okay? Because one of your frames, the origin is still at the middle. So it moves. That's why yours is jumping. So,
He's not touching it, though. He's like, yeah, it's showing. He's floating.
for this one here, we're going to right click, or not right click, we're just going to double click. We're going to make a new sprite on the main layer. I'm going to throw just a color in here. I'm going to make it be blue. And then I'm going to lower the alpha to, I don't know, 50. So it's kind of see-through. Okay? So we have this blue square. We're going to see it when we're editing, but we're not going to see it when we're there. I think they make it like a dark blue, but it doesn't really matter what color you pick. So let's see what they're going to have us do next. We've got this invisible square for movement. Double click and add it. Origin point to the bottom. And it doesn't matter what size it is now because we're going to resize it based on the animation. Close the editor, and we're going to see. So if I close this one here, now I've got this animation piece here that's sized like this. I'm going to resize it to here. And now, at this point, Snap to Grid is not helping me. Because now, I want it to be exactly the size of the player, and I can't get there as I'm trying to resize this.
So we just type in the number?
Nope, turn off Snap to Grid. And now you can resize it smoothly. Because, you know, let's say in a game like this, you've got to make decisions. And the decision that I'm going to make is if you hit my hand outside of this hitbox and you hit my staff, I'm not going to take a hit for this yet. So they tell us the size for this. And they say 53 by 107. I have it at 66 by 104. I think that's more accurate, but maybe even still here, I should just do the player's face. So like if you hit like the corner of his shoes, he's not going to get hurt yet. So it could be something like that. It's up to you where you want this to be. But remember, I adjusted the opacity, or the alpha of it, so that we could go through and see everything. So I did that when I actually painted it. So this is Sprite 2, but we're going to give it a better name than Sprite 2. So I'm going to go rename this and call this Player Box. Because that's going to be our hitbox that we're watching, following for the player. So if yours is darker than mine, you can go over here and change its opacity to like 20, 30, 40%. And it's going to be right here in this common tab on the preference properties. And that'll make it a little bit lighter. Okay? So it says we also want to give the platform movement to the player box object, so more reliable collision detection. So player box is going to get a behavior added, and we're going to right click behaviors, add, and I'm going to add that platform behavior for this, because we did this in our first game where we played. Most people played like soccer or basketball or something, or push boulders. There's our platform behavior again. So we added our platform behavior. What we're going to do now to adjust some of the properties, we can tweak them how we like. The guide suggests to set the jump strength to 1100. It was at 650, and set the gravity to 2500. It was at 1500. Then it says we also want the screen to follow the player, so add another behavior to the player box, and that behavior is going to be scroll 2. So the screen is going to have to follow the player. We may end up widening the screen later, because it's going to be a little bit narrow for right now.
Where's?
So it says you've added both behaviors to player behaviors, so we can close the player dialog box. Let's see. What do we add that to? Did we add that to hitbox or did we add that to player? Player box behaviors. They added platformer. We also want to screen to follow the scroll to behavior. I think they're adding it to both pieces, so we don't have to code for it. So I'm going to go back to behaviors for the sprite, which I'm now going to rename player because I'm realizing I left it at sprite. And I don't know if we need this to have the same behaviors, but we'll test it out and see in a second. So we'll say platform and scroll to. And let's see, now we just need to position the layer box on top of it. Switch to event sheet 1, we're going to create an event. All right, so I think on the event sheet, we're going to add a system every tick. And every tick, what that has us do is add action to the player and set position to another object. Yeah, so I don't think they wanted us to add the behaviors to the player. So I'm going to go to behaviors. I'm going to remove these here.
Oh yeah, the only one player box.
Player box, but then it was they kept on moving between. So what I'm going to add every tick, add action to the player, set position to another object. And that other object is going to be player box. And we're going to go to image point 0. Now, did I do my image point for player box right? I did not. I left it at origin. So watch what happens when I start my events.
I'll follow.
I didn't add the solid behavior. Platformer, so he fell through. And what do we have to add solid to? We need to add solid to the tile. Behaviors, add solid. And now our player should not fall through the platform that we have. But take a look at what an error that I made. Right now, my character is moving. I'm scrolling to. I know there are platform things here. I didn't adjust the origin point of my box. So player box, back to the origin point, and then I'm going to put it down to the bottom. So now, oh, there's the bell. Save.
You can update event sheets.